Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to the March Cabinet meeting. Hopefully we'll get through tonight's meeting without the fire alarm going off. Had an interesting interruption this afternoon during general purposes. I'll give you the fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls while the meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will be subsequently available on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Thank you. Following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillor Bayford. Items 7 and 8, Councillor Pugh. Does anybody else wish to speak under 20.1? No. Thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Yates, who is unwell. Do we have any declarations of interest in declaring items on the business and items of business on the agenda this evening? Councillor.
Yeah, I need to declare an interest on item 4, Chair, on 8 Truro Road, only in the fact that the person who currently owns that property is an employee of Ramsgate Town Council, and as the Chair of Ramsgate Town Council, I thought it was appropriate that I should not take part in any of the debate. Thank you, Chair. There's no other interest, may I add.
Thank you. No other declarations of interest. Minutes of the previous meeting. To approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 25th of January. I propose we take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duckworth, members agree? Agree. Thank you. And we'll move on to 8 Truro Road. So you're cue to leave, Councillor Yates. But don't go too far, will you?
Councillor Yates.
Sorry. Councillor Alban. Sorry. Okay. I don't know how I confused Councillor Yates and Councillor Alban. Very different people.
He's in a pod.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead to introduce, please.
Thank you, Leader. Homelessness and the linked need for temporary accommodation is an issue that I have long been aware of and a long-standing priority for the Council. Our commitment to in-house temporary accommodation is well evidenced. The Labour Group has requested further funding and investment in temporary accommodation at each budget, and our push for the importance of providing in-house temporary accommodation is something that has been supported by both Labour and Conservative Cabinet members. The importance of our approach has been recognised with the shortlisting of our first in-house temporary project, Foy House, for a national award. Both Councillor Bayford and I are extraordinarily proud of not only the project, but also the efforts that went into its creation from officers. Foy House was a flagship project, not only for Thanet, but in terms of a national approach to addressing what is a countrywide housing crisis. Foy House provides 8 self-contained flats for homeless households, often those who have been affected by Section 21 evictions and the affordability and availability of housing in our area. It is owned by us, staffed by us, with on-site support for families, and demonstrates the circular economy that we strive towards, ensuring that finance moves inwards to support further investment and allowing us to provide for residents locally in the way that we want to. As of the 3rd of March 2024, we had 290 households in temporary accommodation, with 190 of these households currently out of area. Our ability to provide for residents is significantly hampered by the availability of local property, and the only way to remedy this is to invest in property and to continue to invest in the growth of our in-house temporary accommodation provision. We are constantly and consistently looking for opportunities to expand this provision and hope to soon have 3 local TA projects up and running, providing housing support for local residents in a very uncertain housing climate. As a second investment, Council has identified an opportunity to purchase 8 Truro Road, Ramsgate, which is currently an empty hotel. The property has recently been refurbished and includes 7 self-contained rooms, which allows for easy conversion to self-contained temporary accommodation. A change of use application will need to be submitted for this site, but early discussions with planning have indicated that this would be supported. All our housing proposals are assessed by financial services to determine the capital and revenue impact of the proposed acquisition, and this is no exception. In addition to the acquisition price of £650,000, other capital costs of £45,000 have been assumed to adapt the property fully, bringing the total scheme cost to £695,000. We are proposing to fund the scheme through a mix of £495,000 of borrowing and £200,000 of housing capital receipts. I often speak about the importance of the moral choice as opposed to the financial choice. I think when planned well, both align, and this is one of those cases. Our priority as a council is to support local families and keep them close to their support networks, schools and employment. In creating an in-house service for temporary accommodation and continually expanding it, we are creating a virtuous circle in terms of financial investment, providing the best outcomes possible in terms of location and internal monitoring, and also providing continual investment in our services and long-term savings. When comparing the revenue impact of borrowing and associated running costs versus the cost of the current provision, it is estimated that the proposal will provide a modest initial annual saving of £5,000. However, due to the profile of the costs, the annual savings grow each year, and modelling shows the savings may increase to £110,000 by year 50. Over the 50-year assessment period, the proposal has been estimated to save a cumulative sum of approximately £2.7 million. These estimated savings may vary depending on several factors, such as inflation rates and borrowing rates. However, the social and community benefits from taking this approach are unquestionable and will continue to provide excellent outcomes for our residents from the moment of purchase. There is no greater priority for us than ensuring that our residents are safe and homed, and linked to the social connections that are so vital to the health of individuals and communities. We will continue to champion this approach and invest in a service that is so essential to the long-term health of our residents and our community. Tonight, Cabinet are asked to agree to proceed with the purchase of the building using the allocated funding within the capital programme. I support this approach entirely and am incredibly proud to be part of housing and of this council, who have recognised a need and a strategy to address it far ahead of much of the country. I say this frequently, but though we are small as a council, we are incredibly committed, creative and caring. This comes through clearly through our in-house initiatives, and I wholly recommend the further growth of our in-house temporary housing. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Keane. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I very much welcome the move to purchase the property in Truro Road using the allocation approved in January 2023 of £2.2 million for the provision of temporary accommodation. This followed the success of the Foy House project, which is managed on site, and I feel this must contribute to its success. I'd like to ask whether the management of Foy House and Truro Road will be shared, or whether a separate manager will be engaged to take on the new acquisition. So really I'd like to know how much time each of them will receive management. Thank you.
I'm happy to leave further detail to the officers behind me, but currently we believe that we have capacity within the current support to extend further. Having the 2 units with the officer that we currently have means that we have enough capacity to support at both sites. We will likely need to expand this as temporary accommodation hopefully increases and continues to increase, but currently we should be able to absorb that within the current staffing. I'm happy to pass to Ms. Jackson.
Yeah, I'd agree completely with that. We can completely absorb the extra 7 units with the additional. The officer only manages the 8 at the moment, so it was always the intention of his role to actually manage more temporary accommodation and also people outside of the area in temporary accommodation. So it can be absorbed easily in his role.
Sorry, can I just ask how, how much time then will the officer be there, be on site at each of these?
Well, there isn't an office on site at Truro Road, whereas there is at Foy House. So he'll still be based at Foy House, but he'll be managing as and when needed to go over there. He'll be managing the tenants daily, giving them support. He'll be over there daily. He'll be monitoring them moving in, helping them with all their bills, exactly like he does at Foy House, but there's just not an office there. So we won't have a base there. He'll be based at Foy House still.
Thank you.
Members, any further discussion? I think this is obviously a very good initiative. It's been moved to proceed with the purchase of the building using the allocated funding within the capital programme. Do members agree? Thank you. Move on to item 5, which is the procurement of fire door replacement and related fire rates items contact. That's what it says there. Oh, Councillor L, yeah. We haven't
Start without me, wouldn't you?
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. Tonight, Cabinet is being asked to authorise the following. Firstly, to award a 6-year contract with an option for the Council to extend for 12 months for the replacement of fire doors in flatted blocks. This would include a fire door replacement programme in blocks where the fire risk assessment has highlighted this as a requirement, and ad hoc replacements when doors become damaged. The value of this contract is expected to be in the region of £3.9 million. Secondly, we are asked to delegate authority to the Director of Place, following consultation with the portfolio holder for housing, together with the Director of Finance, to enter into the procurement and implement the contract to the value specified. This contract is to replace the fire doors in our low-rise flatted blocks. Our in-house housing service has come an extraordinarily long way since the days of East Kent Housing. But the circumstances that we faced and improvements necessary to move our service forwards are still ongoing, and our commitment to bringing our service to the excellent standard we require of ourselves to provide the service residents deserve continues. The scale of this contract links directly to capital spend that should have been spent previously under East Kent Housing to ensure that our properties are meeting and exceeding standards for fire safety. The value of this contract is expected to be in the region of £3.9 million, which will be spent across 6 to 7 years. This is an approximate value of £600,000 per year for the replacement of essential fire doors in low-rise blocks. This contract will address the backlog of fire door replacements that have been identified through fire risk assessments, as well as the provision of replacements on an ad hoc basis when doors no longer meet current requirements. Our excellent tenant and leaseholder services have been building the programme and working on a specification to get themselves into a position to invite tenders for the contract, and we have taken into consideration requirements and requests from our tenant and leaseholder group to ensure that residents have a choice of design for their doors to continue our commitment to making houses homes. Fire doors play a hugely important role in compartmentation of a building. Compartmentation splits a block up into sections. This ensures that if there is a fire in one section, the compartmentation will prevent smoke or fire from reaching the next area for 30 or 60 minutes, depending on where in the structure it is. Compartmentation is essential to protect our residents and provide for effective implementation of fire safety procedures. To give practical context, this means that if there is a fire in a corridor, an occupant would be protected in their flat for a minimum of 30 minutes, allowing time for the fire service to provide direct assistance. The procurement of this contract will give greater value for money through scale and allows for comprehensive and committed relationships to develop between the council and the provider to ensure accountability and best service. It will also allow us to be more responsive in terms of commissioning and producing items and services when needed. The procurement strategy is to hold an open procurement campaign, inviting eligible contractors to tender via the Kent Business Portal. There is nothing more important than the safety of our residents, and commissioning in this way to ensure that we move forwards from the days of East Kent housing is a crucial step towards ensuring that our service embodies excellence within housing provision. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor White. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Duckworth. Members, any discussion? Councillor Keane?
I've just got a question, really. What about flats that are privately owned? Have we got flats that are privately owned in the blocks? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we do. We have leaseholders that own their own flat within our blocks, and when we are replacing fire doors wholesale throughout a block, we will need to replace their doors at the same time to ensure the compartmentation and the safety of all residents in the block.
So do they pay for that?
They would pay for that, yes.
Thank you, members. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 6, new and updated current housing related policies. Adopt new and update current housing related policies. Councillor Whitehead.
It's me again. Cabinet is tonight being asked to authorise the following. We are being asked to adopt 2 new policies, our compensation policy and our write-off policy, and we are also being asked to accept amendments to 3 reviewed policies, our disabled aids and adaptations policy, our antisocial behaviour policy, and our rechargeable works order policy. We are also asked to delegate authority to the head of tenant and leaseholder services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing to make minor operational changes to the policies as required. The 2 new policies have been identified as being required through lessons learned and are part of our ongoing commitment to driving our housing service forward in terms of the protections and respect we guarantee for our residents. Our compensation policy sets out the circumstances through which compensation or goodwill gesture will be offered. This gives officers a framework to apply that ensures a consistent approach and empowers officers to resolve issues without need for escalation. This approach and process is essential to be both fair and clear to residents. Our write-off policy is required to tell officers how to identify and manage former tenant arrears. It describes the works officers must do to attempt the recovery of former tenant arrears before it is recommended for write-off, and gives detail on the authorisation levels required for different values of write-off recommendations. The 3 policies that we are reviewing are our disabled aids and adaptations policy, antisocial behaviour policy, and rechargeable works policy. When reviewing policies, officers always check the application and performance of the policy whilst it has been in use, and check for changes to legislation, regulation, or best practice. Our disabled aids and adaptations policy enables TDC to provide housing which best meets the assessed needs of tenants with disabilities. Changes that have been made are to support and ensure our commitment to fulfilling our responsibilities in terms of our equalities provision. These changes include the removal of rent arrears as a reason to not carry out an adaptation, introduction of a simplified dispute process by guiding tenants to the corporate complaints process, removal of the timescales for completion of various adaptations, and the addition of our methodology for prioritisation of cases. Our antisocial behaviour policy supports TDC to tackle antisocial behaviour in a responsive, proportionate and robust manner. ASB has significant and far-reaching effects on communities, and effective response is essential. Equally important is recognising that some antisocial behaviour has complex and vulnerability-linked causes, and that residents subject to complaint may themselves require social and tenancy support. Addressing foundational issues and supporting all residents will be key to the success of our ASB policy. Changes that have been made include a simplification of the dispute process by guiding tenants to our corporate complaints procedure. Our rechargeable works policy aims to fairly and responsibly apply charges and collect debt for works that are the responsibility of the tenant. We have clear and outlined responsibilities to our tenants. Equally, residents have responsibilities relating to unnecessary costs incurred to the service, as this impacts on our ability to deliver our service overall. Changes that have been made within the policy are to include costs for missed appointments, include costs incurred for abuse of the repairs service. All policies have been subject to consultation by the Thanet tenant and leaseholder group, as their every viewpoint and input is absolutely essential to creating a healthy, responsive and reflective service. All policies have also been reviewed by the Housing Cabinet Advisory Group and overview and scrutiny to ensure that we are effectively analysing and scrutinising policies. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. So a seconder? Councillor Keane. Any discussion, members? Councillor Alban?
Yeah, thank you. It's in relation to the write-off policy, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is the intervention of officers in relation to the debt build-up, and as to obviously I've seen there as a monthly update, a part of the process, but I take it it's practice, and maybe I obviously might need to ask one of the officers for the thing. Not saying you can't answer it, but I'm just that we meet with those people. Do we put in a plan for them for a lesser amount of money for their increase for their rent, or how do we work with that? Because it's not clear in here.
Yeah, I can answer
Thank
on
you.
some of that.
Oh.
So I think a lot of this begins before the intervention of this policy. So we do have teams who work with all residents who might be struggling or might be experiencing financial difficulties to try and both prevent arrears building up and also to resolve arrears before it gets to a point that it's very difficult for others to manage. In terms of the specifics, how we deal with arrears, once we are dealing with former tenants rather than current tenants, I'm happy to hand over to the lovely Miss O'Sullivan.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Whitehead. We have a policy that actually assists us in being able to recover rent arrears while tenants are current tenants, and this policy, as Councillor Whitehead said, does deal solely with former tenants' arrears. So once they've left, no longer a tenant of us in any form whatsoever. And while they are a tenant with us, there is a lot of intervention to assist people to be able to meet their rent payments. And where we can, we will apply financial support.
More, Chair, please. If that's the case, what concerns me as well is that we've got figures of up to £20,000 of arrears, and I think that's a cause for concern for me in relation to the amount of time that's taken for that to build up and to get to that point, that where we should maybe looking. I'm not saying we shouldn't do what we're doing, because I fully support it, but it just worries me that we end up with a level of £20,000, etc.
I don't think we actually have any, do we? No. Yeah, surely. Yeah.
Thank you. So those levels for authorisations of write-off are not for one case of arrears. Our intention is to look at our write-offs over a period, be that in the period of a month or be it the period of a quarter, and we will put together a schedule of write-offs that we want to do within that period, and that's where those authorisation levels occur. We don't don't see levels of £20,000 for one person.
Again, for me, that wasn't particularly clear in that Thank you.
Mr. Blundell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, the work Mr. Sullivan and the team have done is to combine on align those limits with the limits we've got for write-offs across our corporate debt profile. So the same write-off limits and the same delegations are in place if we're dealing with a business rate write-off or just a general sundry debt. So that's the reason they might look like they're high, because obviously I'm only authorised to delegate up to a certain, to write up to a certain level. Over and above that's obviously appropriate that it would come back to Cabinet.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the adoption of 2 new policies and accept the amendments of 3 review policies and delegate authority to the Head of Tenant and Leaseholder Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing to make minor operational changes to the policies as required. Members agree? Agreed. Thank you. Item 7 is the DeLU externally funded projects approval procurement, and that is me. So this report recommends the Cabinet approve expenditure which is above the key decision threshold for services that will support the delivery of Ramsgate and Margate levelling up funded projects. The projects are all part of the Simplification Pathfinder pilot that was approved by Cabinet on the 21st of December. The capital funding is already allocated within the Council's approved budget. The report is therefore about the key decision to spend, not the allocation of budget or the business case for that allocation. The subject to the expenditure includes the project management of the next phase of the levelling up funded projects, these being technical design, construction and handover phases. And I think it probably includes some town deal funds projects as well as levelling up projects, but they're all under the same heading now. The report also requests approval to procure design team services. This is the engagement of design teams for the remainder of the design and delivery period. Also included is the award of a contract for a specialist row berth survey. This is the survey work which will inform the detailed design for the berth refurbishment as part of the port infrastructure project. Lastly, the report refers to cost consultant services. Cost managers provide services in the process of planning, estimating, budgeting and controlling costs in support of completing the project within the approved budget. The services that are proposed to be procured are fundamental to the continued progress of the LUF programme of works. Such project management and development services are allowed for and included within the programme budget. Obviously, these bids would not have been successful if it had not been proposed that a proportionate allocation of funding for the project management and project development elements of the programme were included. For most capital projects, services will be required such as design teams, project managers and cost consultants, along with activities such as site inspections. The Council does not have all of these specialist services in-house, which is why they're often outsourced. On a programme of this size, the value of these services will be above the Council's key decision threshold and therefore comes to Cabinet for approval. This shows good governance in terms of the assurance that we're providing to central government and the way in which we're managing delivery of this programme. The report highlights that the value of the berth survey work tenders received was higher than the estimated value. The report describes the likely reasoning behind this and also highlights that between a quarter and a third of the value of the tender returns is for provisional sums. The provisional sum element of the successful tender, when awarded, will be expended entirely at the Council's discretion based upon need at the time. So, the recommendation is that Cabinet approves option 1 set out in section 3 of the report and agrees 1 to agree expenditure in excess of the key decision threshold and as estimated at paragraph 3.1 of the report for the procurement of external project management, support for the remaining design, construction and handover phases of the Walpole Bay Pavilion project and Ramsgate levelling up projects, to agree expenditure above the key decision threshold and as estimated in paragraph 3.1 of this report for the procurement of the necessary berth survey work for the second phase of the work in respect to the Ro-Ro ferry service, to agree expenditure above the key decision threshold and as estimated at 3.1 of the report for the procurement of cost consultant support for the technical design, construction and handover phases of the Margate Town Deal and Ramsgate levelling up projects, for to agree expenditure above the key decision threshold and as estimated at paragraph 3.1 of the report for the purposes of the engagement of full design teams for the remainder of the design and delivery period in respect to the following projects: port infrastructure and green campus. So I so move. Is there a seconder, please? Everyone wants to second that. Okay, Councillor Keane can second it. And speaking on the 20.1 is Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. That was certainly quite a mouthful for you to get through all of that. I appreciate, this is a key decision for a variety of these and the reasoning why the cost exceeds £250,000. But my question is you know, considering that costs are going up and inflation and everything, and that it's important that these things are delivered. Previously, we've included within the provision of these that these decisions, whilst they're being made as a key decision and granted by a key decision, that they'd still, the portfolio holder, relevant portfolio holder, would still be consulted. So I just wanted to ask the question if that would still be the case. And also as well, there's always a risk, particularly with gaining or purchasing outside support to deliver on these projects, that consultant costs can spiral and stuff like that. So I just wanted to understand how that will be managed so that we ensure that we can deliver all of these projects rather than a lot of the fees just get swallowed up by consultants' costs. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable concern, and certainly insofar as I'm involved in it, and I'm sure Councillor Duckworth as well, we will be highly engaged in what the individual projects are costing and what the money's being spent on. So I think we can probably reassure you on that front. I don't know if Ms Askew would like to comment, or Mr Humber. Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of the costs of consultants, I mean, just to give an example, we've just been out to tender for the berth survey works, and we put together a very prescribed, sort of carefully prepared specification for that. There's sort of contingency items in there, provisional sums in there, and it's really designed as much as possible to allow us to control the cost by making sure that there's a maximum amount of information in the tender for the bidders to price. With any contract, there can be unknowns when you actually get to do the piece of work, but I think we've done the best we can to make sure that there's a maximum amount of information and provision in there to be able to adjust within within the tender to make sure that we deliver exactly what it is we need, at a reasonable cost.
Thank you. Members, any further discussion on this item? Okay, I'm not going to read the recommendations again, but it's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And we move on to item 8. I'm struggling with words this evening, which is not really usual for me. We move on to item 8, which is the further DeLU externally funded project approvals reallocating funding, and this is Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Leader. This report outlines the requirement to reallocate funding within the Town's Fund monies of the Simplification Pathfinder pilot. 2 aborted projects from the approved Margate Town Deal programme mean that there is funding within the programme to reallocate to other projects. There is 500,000 available within the Coastal Wellbeing Intervention and 4 million from the aborted Destination Dreamland project. As the accountable body for the projects within the Simplification Pathfinder pilot, Thanet District Council is the ultimate decision maker. However, this is following engagement with the new Thanet Regeneration Partnership Board, who supported the proposed reallocation. It is recommended that Cabinet note that moving funding between themes and projects up to a value of 5 million is permissible under the Simplification Pathfinder project. 2. Note that the reallocation of the Destination Dreamland Project Fund has been discussed and agreed with the Simplification Pathfinder project. 3. Agree that the 4 million from the aborted Destination Dreamland project now be reallocated to a scheme for the Margate Winter Gardens. 4. Agree that the 325,000 from the aborted project on the Coastal Wellbeing Intervention be reallocated to the Walpole Bay Pavilion project. 5. Agree that the 175,000 from the aborted project in the Coastal Wellbeing Intervention be reallocated to the skate park project. I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Whitehead. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that I really welcome that the £4 million from the Dreamland project is now going to be going towards the Winter Gardens. I think that's a proposal that everyone can support. although it's a surprise for there to be cross-party support for things a lot of the time. I think that it's really encouraging that we can make something good of that, and it provides a lot of the funding that I think is desperately needed for the Winter Gardens so that we can find an operator to take that on. I would also just like to voice a concern that it's a shame that the Oval Bandstand project isn't going to be delivered. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of it now. I don't think there's any point, but it's a real shame that that's not delivered. And my only comment would be that now that this is now progressing, and same with the £4 million going towards the Winter Gardens, that the Walpole Bay Pavilion project and also the skate park project, that we do crack on and we actually start to deliver on these things. And I appreciate that there have been some delays, but I think residents deserve to see some progress. And for every year that that the skate park isn't started or completed is another year that a big resource like that isn't being enjoyed by people that are coming down to visit and members of the community, along with all of the other projects in the town deal. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. I mean, I think we do agree on a number of things cross-party, certainly as far as the front benches are concerned. I'm not quite sure about some of your back benches, whether they agree, but... on my back benches and I are usually in agreement, in my experience. Yeah, and I think in terms of delivery, I mean, I'm sure Councillor Duckworth would, I'll let her come in if she wants to say so, but I'm sure we're all anxious to get on and see things delivered, and as it happens, the next item is one of the earliest things that's going to be delivered, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Did you want to add anything, Councillor Duckworth?
Just to say that it's really helpful now we've got the simplification pathfinder pilot and the ability to move money around, so I'm really grateful that that's now a possibility.
Members, any further comment? So I think we're all quite excited about having the £4 million potentially available for the Winter Gardens, and I'm sure we all recognise that probably that and the port in Ramsgate are the two highest profile projects that we've got, and delivering them is going to be quite a key indicator of success. And I'm sure we're all absolutely committed to that happening. On the front benches, anyway.
Best of luck.
Okay, members, it's been moved and seconded. Do you agree? Agree. Thank you. And we move on to item 9, which is the Newington Community Centre project. So this report outlines a proposal to carry out refurbishment works to the Newington Community Centre, which, as most of you know, is part of the Newington housing estate. The proposal comes forward now on the basis that survey work of the building for the Ramsgate Levelling Up Fund project have identified works that are required. These works will upgrade the energy efficiency of the building and lead to lower operational costs for the centre in the long term. The works will also improve the accessibility of the building and lead to the creation of some one-to-one offices for wellbeing sessions. The project is directly delivering one of Thanet's most deprived wards and is supporting people within the local community to access further training opportunities in order for them to be able to take advantage of the jobs being created through the wider regeneration programmes. Most of you will be aware that I am one of the members for Newington. Spend quite a lot of time talking to the people at the centre. I'm a big admirer of the work that goes on there, and I think that the opportunity to improve the building as it exists alongside the extension, and obviously make some savings in the process by doing both at the same time, is excellent. And it's also a unique project because I think it's the only asset which is in the housing revenue account, which is actually part of the Levelling Up programme. And therefore provides that opportunity to fund it. So I'm really pleased we're able to take this forward, and I know that those who run the Newington Community Centre are really excited about it, and I believe that this will be one of the earliest projects that we're able to deliver through the schemes. I look forward to all members of the council coming to visit and seeing what a success it is, and I'm sure they will do. So, it's recommended Cabinet approve the new project for the Newington Community Centre as part of the HRA Capital Programme, and approve that refurbishment works to the Newington Community Centre are delivered with the Levelling Up Fund project at the centre. And I so move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Alban. Any discussion, members?
Yes, please.
Councillor Alban.
Yes, please. I'd really pleased to see this going forward. Before I was elected in 2019, I did some work during the children's summer holiday on the Newington estate, and especially located around the Newington Centre. and with mainly doing the work in the local church there with feeding the kids actually. And I just think it's such a worthwhile project, and the residents will get great satisfaction out of this. So I think it's great. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's worth saying that this project taking place in Newington and away from the town centre is quite significant, because I think the community does feel sometimes a bit isolated from the town centre, and the fact that the council through this funding is able to invest in that community is an important signal that Newington isn't forgotten. It's very much part of Ramsgate, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Members, it's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting.